What's going on, everybody? This is Daoud Marion with See It Draw It, the channel where I make advanced drawing techniques more approachable for beginners. In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of the latest works that I did, and I did it in my sketchbook. But I'm also going to be sharing some secrets that I don't talk about in other videos. So watch the video all the way through to the end. Let's jump in. This is a drawing of one of my students, Francine, and she was drawing me and I was drawing her. I went ahead and painted this drawing with some gouache paints. And I have a special technique where I use a varnish. So I varnish the paper first. And in varnishing the paper, it makes it to where when I put the gouache down, it's almost like you're painting on plastic. So imagine if you're painting watercolor. Here's one of those tips I was telling you about. Imagine you're painting with watercolor on a piece of plastic. That's going to look a lot different than when you paint with watercolor on paper. So in order to get that look of the brush strokes and make it look wet even after it's dry, this is why I use the varnish on the paper first. Then I'm going to mix the varnish with the paint, and then that's going to help the paint strokes be more pronounced when I do the final painting. I'm approaching this drawing as if I was working on an oil painting where I coated the canvas with the sepia color in the background, leaving all the brush strokes because I wanted it to look like it was a canvas. And I also wanted to look like it's done in oil paints. I wanted it to look sort of wet. In this particular drawing, I went ahead and painted the drawing with gouache. And I use gouache in a different way. Sometimes I use acrylic in the same way, but I use them, I kind of pretend like they're watercolors. But in order to make them act like they're watercolors, you have to use certain mediums to make that work. In this case, I used an acrylic varnish. So when I mix the varnish with the gouache, it makes it to where the gouache comes out translucent and you can see through it, and it dries with the brush strokes. That's the reason why I use the varnish on this one. Then I go in and I start to add shadows. Now, one thing about shadows is I always add my shadows as if the light is coming from the top going down. And that's the easiest way for me to calculate if I don't have a photo reference. When I'm looking at a photo reference, then, I'll add the shadow. It may be coming from the right or from the left. But generally, I don't use reference. A lot of times I just make it up because I have a really quick style of painting and drawing. I don't take a lot of time with my work. I really push through it and I'm more emotionally in the moment with my work. And so that's why I don't really have time to be like looking at a reference. But there are times when I do that. So it's not every single time. And one cool thing about the varnish is that it dries really fast. Another thing I like about varnishing drawings, and you could try this too, get a gloss varnish and varnish some of your drawings and paintings in your sketchbook, is that it really brings out the color of whatever your medium was. So in this case, I'm using a ballpoint pen. It brings out the subtle blues. Even though it was a black ink, you can see the subtle blues in it. Here's another pro tip. If you use varnish on your drawings or your paintings in your sketchbook, it will actually pronounce and bump up the intensity of your drawing or your painting. You'll notice the energy that it takes on. It's just much different. It feels more finished than if you just leave it without putting any kind of covering over it. One of the things I really like in drawings and paintings are just strokes. As you can tell from my style, you've seen a lot of my videos, I just really love strokes. So whether it's drawing strokes or brush strokes. So if you notice here, I like to try to preserve those strokes. And what I do is I paint in a very rough, quick way. And so you see how you can see all the brush strokes there. This is a lesson that I do typically with students to get them used to drawing people that are looking at them. One thing that I want to say about this exercise is that I also teach them how to draw people without the other person knowing that they're being drawn. So for example, you're at a cafe, you're on the BART, you're on the bus, you're on a train, and you're drawing someone. You don't necessarily want them to know that you're drawing them for two reasons. One, because it's going to be awkward. The other reason is because they're going to start posing and then they're going to ask you questions, and then that's more distractions for you. Over the years, I've grown accustomed to drawing with lots of distractions, with the train moving and bumps and all sorts of people standing around over your shoulder looking at you drawing and asking you questions. Whoa, how long you been drawing? How long is it going to take you to do that? And so I dipped the student into the sauce of drawing amongst distractions. The very first step is just to draw someone that's looking directly at you while you're drawing them and they're drawing you.